Hello everyone, my name is Spencer Walsh. Welcome to today's show. We have a good one for you. We are really going to be spending a lot of time today getting into a very massive debate, a little bit of a dramatic debate, but I do believe a very important debate about the future of the Democratic Party, and really the future of the left as it relates to the Democratic Party in general from some of our kind of favorite media hosts. They really had a kind of a big back and forth. That would be Crystal Ball of Breaking Points, Kyle Kalinske of Secular Talk, and of course Briahna Joy Gray of the Bad Faith podcast. Three people who I think are, a lot of people respect, maybe some people that also listen to Newsflash, listen to any of those shows, and it raises a very interesting point. So we're going to take some time, break through some of the clips, discuss what was said, and, what everyone was really waiting for, who's correct. Let's be real. We'll discuss who is correct, but also some really, really important stuff that we're going to get to first today, coming out of Morocco with regards to the earthquake there. They obviously, a really, really horrific situation. Many, many people have died, but the government really, really screwing up without any kind of foreseeable or clear obstacle in their way, the provision of aid to their citizens who are in desperate need of it after the recent earthquake there. We'll get into that and the Democrats on the show today. All right, so we start today's show with Morocco, and it's proved to be a pretty big and kind of a pretty relatively surprising situation, as governments far and wide, they have offered aid to Morocco. Following what was it was a 6.8 magnitude earthquake that's left more than 2,500 people dead, thousands injured and displaced. But to the bafflement of officials abroad, Morocco has been slow to accept support. So this is just many, many countries coming through trying to get aid to the country, but Morocco's been like, we're fine. And it really, this is, you really get kind of, Morocco is kind of a very authoritarian government, with a long kind of history of, just a history of being kind of the imperial force, and then more recently they were kind of imperial, subjects kind of France, and the kind of the back and forth that they've had there in the past. It's a very, kind of a big, contentious colonial situation, but right now they have, a very kind of strongman, dictator, typical classic situation there. But countries including France, Germany, Italy, and the United States, along with the United Nations, said they were willing to provide any help they could after Friday's devastating earthquake in the High Atlas Mountains. According to Washington Post here, the Morocco Interior Ministry said in a statement that it would initially accept search and rescue teams only from Britain, Qatar, Spain, and the UAE, which are called friendly countries, after taking into account the needs of the field, which is really kind of an incredible, friendly countries, since when? Since when did Britain have great relations with Morocco? Since when did, Spain, of all places, have friendly, Qatar, that is incredible, and I guess friendly Muslim countries there as well, probably more of an Qatar and the UAE, which, again, we saw Spanish nationalists today. They disrupted the moment of silence in Spain for Moroccan victims of the earthquake. Really kind of a shitty thing to do. But anyway, so Morocco has also appeared to slow to take up offers of broader humanitarian and technical assistance. Washington has reached out immediately to the Moroccan government to offer any assistance that we can provide. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said on Sunday on CNN, "We await word from the Moroccan government to find out how we can help and where we can help." The U.S. Agency for International Development had not yet immediately responded to a request on Monday as to whether it had mobilized any teams or assistance. So France, they obviously ruled over Morocco as a colonial power from 1912 to 1956. The lack of update of support was greeted with surprise and sparked speculation that a cooling in relations between Paris and Rabat, especially with all the kind of recent trouble in the region regarding French colonies kind of being cooed. France is not a popular country in that part of the world, kind of understandably, and they have not been so for quite a while. well. Understandably so. French Foreign Minister Catherine Colonna said that some 60 other countries, including France, had offered assistance, but stressed that she believed the controversy was being overblown. Morocco had not refused France's help, she told the French channel BFM TV. France will give $5.4 million to French and international nonprofits working on the ground in Morocco and stands ready to support Morocco further. So again, trying to kind of play this down here, which is interesting. Simon Martin, the British ambassador to Morocco, said that 60 UK search and rescue experts and 4 search dogs had arrived in the country to support Moroccan-led operations. But, we're talking about aid here. I think that's a pretty important part in terms of, the food, the money, and just the basic supplies and resources to rebuild after what was obviously a really horrific, just unimaginably 6.8 magnitude. That is no small potatoes. That is a very serious earthquake there. And being able to get back on your feet, rebuild after that is going to be a big challenge where they need just more than a few search and rescue dogs, as I'm sure, those dogs probably are, very cute or something like that. So the Spanish Urban Search and Rescue Team said it was receiving and coordinating with international teams. Countries including Tunisia and Saudi Arabia said they were sending aid, though it is not as clear yet if any has been dispatched. Meanwhile, a 50-person team from Germany's technical relief agency assembled at the Cologne-Bonn airport over the weekend and was sent home from the airport after their offer for help was not taken up. Which is going to be a pretty, because the bottom line is, obviously, it's going to be, can the Moroccan people get the help that they need? Can they get it from their government? Honestly, it's not necessarily the best to have, a bunch of these other, especially, places like the USAID and, a bunch of, foaming at the mouth, frothing about losing all the possible profit opportunities, like these foreign investors coming in and saying, we want to rebuild your country for pennies on the dollar. We're going to do it in the most fair, equitable way possible. I get if you're Morocco having some skepticism over that, but the bottom line, clearly for this government is that you're going to have to find a way to keep or get your people back up on their feet after an awful situation. And, obviously I get some sort of skepticism with regards to the West, especially, a country like France or anything like that. But, by the end of the day, you got to actually get some aid out there. You want to have at least a kind of continuing stable government. Addressing journalists on Monday, German Foreign Ministry spokesman Sebastian Fischer said there was no indication that decision on aid by Morocco was political. So they this is the German team that they're kind of referring to that got sent back. So addressing journalists on Monday, German foreign minister said, again, no political. The Moroccan side thanked us for the offer of help, he said, adding that in emergencies you have to ensure coordination. But others expressed surprise that the assistance was being turned down. Germany seems to be the one where they turned it down the most directly and the most clearly. It is incomprehensible why this help is not requested. Tweeted Karl Julius Kronenberg, a member of the parliament for Germany's Free Democratic Party, which is kind of the liberal democratic, the kind of centrist neoliberal party of Germany. It shouldn't be about misunderstood national pride, but only the fastest and best possible help. Even if relief officials wanted to accept foreign assistance, permission would require approval from the very top, and any such request could easily become mired in a bureaucratic chain of command, said Samia Arazuki, an expert in Moroccan history and governments at Stanford University. It's heavily centralized and controlled, so that means nothing can happen until approval comes from the person who is higher up. It's only going to be kind of a very... I do get the sense that we're kind of at the beginning of truly understanding what the story is about, because I think it's going to be important to, get more from the Moroccan side, hear more from the Moroccan people about what type of aid they're truly getting. Because if they're getting this aid and, things are steaming to... Maybe it started off a little bit slow, but the rebuilding, restructuring process is helping getting people back on their feet in a time that, just the country is satisfied with, then I think a lot of stuff will blow over. But, if they're actively turning down aid for some other reason from countries who are willing to give it, and really, things start to become a problem with regards to, just the safety of people. We find out way more people have died because of, and we start to see, real death, suffering, destruction, because not just because of the earthquake, because of the gross negligence of the Moroccan government. Obviously, that's when you start to see the real problems there for sure. So reluctance to allow a broad range of aid could stem from reluctance to permit scrutiny or lose control of the narrative about the conditions in communities hit by the quake amid potential public relations nightmare. An influx of foreign aid workers could be a source of anxiety for the Moroccan state, as perhaps it would shed light on issues that many of us have been trying to signal are not tenable and lives are at stake. So this is said Samia Arazuki, who is the expert that the Washington Post quoted from Stanford University. All right. It is now time to move on to a little bit of trauma. So, yeah, this is a very kind of interesting situation that we have. But before we do that, we are going to take one brief minute for this note about feedback. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening and supporting Newsflash. We now have a brand new way for you to be heard if you want, whether a text message or a audio message. Please, no video messages. I really just do not think that's necessary. We have a new feedback box open for you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is officially open. SWRN702@gmail.com. Send a text message, send a voice message of no more than 30 seconds via the voice memos function. Either of those two options, and we will 100%, not going to find this guarantee anywhere else. We're going to play it on the show, listen to what you have to say, and it literally could be about anything. Well, if it's inappropriate, we won't play it, but it could be about anything. Thank you so much. This is my thank you to all the listeners who have stuck out with us and want to have their own voice in the show. SWRN702@gmail.com is the address. All right, we now return to the action today. So that it really kind of an incredible situation where, incredible situation, incredible day, as this is our, it's coming out on the 12th, but this is obviously our official 9/11 episode, and, it's coming in just as recording this at night on the kind of 9/11. As New York has been hit with another tragedy involving a jet. Of course, I'm referring to Aaron Rodgers' injury last night, or his first big time out on the football field there for the New York Jets, which did not end well. Literally the first. Everyone's donned up in their NYPD hats, and right away he's out on the field. He's on his back. His left ankle hurt. So hopefully he is able to kind of figure that out as well. Maybe we get a little bit more 9/11 kind of retrospective if there is time. But first, we have some drama to discuss. Briahna Joy Gray on the Kyle Kalinske and Crystal Ball show that they do. Still kind of getting over the fact that they are married, which is incredibly weird. I don't know if you don't know them. There are two commentators, left-wing kind of political, media figures. Briahna Joy Gray is one as well. She was kind of a journalistic background, a little bit more than Crystal and Kyle. They have more kind of commentator, political, pundit backgrounds. But she also, Briahna Joy Gray worked on the Bernie Sanders campaign, and they're pretty much, they've all had like podcasts or whatever, and they are just had a little powwow, a chat to discuss, and it got a little, voted blue no matter what approach did the left take to Biden, kind of the age-old question that, by the way, shout out to Briahna Joy Gray, who has done absolutely amazing work on bringing up, having really important conversations that people on the left wing of the Democratic Party, just the left of this country in general, need to have about the future way forward, airing out important disagreements, being yelled at, yelling back at people, and dealing with quite a lot of, abuse and smearing from not just liberals, but even other people on the left who are just, have all sorts of other motives as well. But I've always found her to be an incredibly just, good faith person. Her show may be called Bad Faith, but she's an incredibly good faith person who I really thought came off incredibly well in this exchange just about, vote blue no matter, because it's like, if you're kind of coming in, I think sometimes, both of them could be a little bit clearer, but in terms of someone who's more like, respectful, more, arguing good faith, more just less just contemptuous and just full of bile in the way that honestly Kyle was in this exchange. I think Briahna gets that trophy if as we're calling it, no questions asked. Kyle came off just frankly like a child, but I'm going to go, see what you think here as he gets a little bit animated. Of course, he's got the facts there, but I think Briahna Joy Gray puts it in a perspective that, makes those facts kind of pale in comparison. It seems essentially more like kind of cope, even if Kyle does make a few good points. Enough with the ado. Let's get into it.
I didn't expect him to do any of it, and he did it. And this is something that, if I said early on, Biden's going to do nothing on student loan debt, everybody on the left would have been like, you're right, he's going to do.
Yeah, so they're talking here essentially about student debt and how to feel about it, and, how should, essentially, what perspective should a left-wing Democratic adjacent person have when it comes to dealing with that, and, in getting a little bit of a, just an appropriate perspective on Biden. And it's just like, do we feel really good they did it? Do we feel, it's like, yeah, it's a whole situation.
Do nothing. Now he does 5-6 different things on it, and it's like people go, no, doesn't count. I'm not saying what he's doing is perfect. Obviously, the best thing to do is to wipe it all out through executive order, and he has the authority to do that. That'd be the best thing to do. He didn't do that, but can we at least acknowledge the facts of what went down? And I see this rugged insistence. Honestly, it's like Biden derangement syndrome among some people.
Again, what is the purpose of that? It just seems so just basically illogical for me. It's like, sure, you can say that it's happening. You could say, okay, Biden's doing this. He could have done this. I think you got to, play both sides of the story. But essentially, like this debate here about the, student debt situation, I think what essentially happened, Biden has always had the authority to, through the Higher Education Act, through other kind of, legal processes in which the president has canceled student debt in the past, through various kind of emergency situations. That was, that was one he actually did use. But the President Biden, they that position does have the authority to cancel debt accrued by students. They just do. And that the fact is, we kind of knew, I think Biden, I think he promised $10,000-$20,000 student debt cancellation, which I think was one thing that, I guess, I don't know, Elizabeth Warren got in his ear about. He comes in, he does he's kind of quiet. He gets a lot of pressure, Manchin resists him on it. And then I think he finally is able to, just before the election, in a very dubious, probably the weakest legal route to canceling $10,000 student debt, he signs that, executive order, stroke of the pen, that's overturned by the Supreme Court. And, I haven't heard too much about this, but Biden is pursuing this through kind of the Higher Education Act. But, bottom line remains, he did incredibly, I think, on this issue, an incredibly scummy thing, which is get this huge, surge of young support right before the midterms by saying, okay, we'll cancel your student debt, or at least we'll cancel a good portion of it, and people see that right before the midterms. But as soon as the midterms come in, people vote Democrat, that starts to get pulled away, and it's all because, Biden. I think this is something you have to make Biden be accountable for, and it was a really, really tough thing because I know people, full disclosure, I'm in a position where I don't have to take student debt, but I know it's not like I don't know tons and tons of people who have had to, literally have been in position, been in the right kind of means-tested bubble, and they've seen, okay, look, wow, this was promised to me, and because Biden did a legal route, which was not the best route, but it was the quickest route, or whatever he tried to, I wasn't in the room, it's easy to say, he just tried to do this as a ploy to young voters, which very well could be true. I mean, he's a politician after all, but, you can't prove that until you're actually in the room with him and saying, hear him saying that, I guess, but it's like, it certainly does not look good when you are, through a kind of a shitty legal strategy, you come in, give people tons of false hope, and then snatch it away. And because you are, you absolutely refuse, you're fundamentally incapable of trying to make a deal on the debt ceiling, the student debt moratorium that was really keeping a lot of people afloat, leading to, really highly improved economic conditions. Because of your really absolute failure on that, many people are having to, repay their student debt a lot sooner than they otherwise would have, because Biden gave it away because A, he made a bad political move, or B, he didn't really care about the issue in the first place. Take your pick, but either way, they're not good. Either way, they're not politically smart. And either way, it's like, it's important that we at least review that record in wholesale. And that I think, but taking that record, you can talk about. I think it's not bad practice as a left wing person, especially someone who at least to a certain degree considers himself like a journalist or whatever. To say, okay, Biden has done this, he's done that. Here's what the situation is. Here's what stands now. But to spend all the time, like Kyle Klinsky seems so insistent on doing, spending all the time. Oh, Joe Biden, you're so good. Like you've done such a good job. Like it's not everything I want, but I'm so proud of you. I'm so happy for you. And just like this, I think there's a very fine line. You can say, okay, he did that. He could have done a lot better. Here's the bad things he did, but here's why there's some reasons for hope. He can't give up yet. But again, this insistence to just pat Joe Biden on the back for this, I think is unnecessary. It's like, why do you, as a relatively low rent left wing political YouTuber, have to be the one when everyone in the mainstream media is going to do this anyway, to come out and say, oh, Biden did this? And if you are not giving Biden enough credit for doing what he did, which was, again, it was half-hearted, it was half-assed, but yes, obviously for all the people out there, it was better than the alternative. It was a step in the right direction. But again, it kind of comes back to what people say about AOC. Do we want a step in the right direction, or do we want real, lasting, fundamental change? And it's not really a question of what we want, really, even because at the time, I think it's pretty clear. Like left wing people aren't really in a big position to make demands to really be kind of almost be putting their dicks on the table for a dick measuring contest here. But like, I'm sorry for the crude use of language, but it's like you don't have to do that, but you also or you're not really going to be able to do that. But what you really do not have to do, and I think this is where Briahna Joy Gray makes such a good point, and it's really kind of into the aesthetic. Really, it's just the kind of the way this kind of unorganized, disorganized left chooses to take the posture they choose to take to Biden. It's like, I just do not get, for the life of me, this insistence by Klinsky, because he's the male voice that you hear there, the kind of whinier male voice, to be like, it's a Biden derangement syndrome, but like people aren't giving Joe Biden credit for enough things he's doing. This is a really big deal. It's a big deal. It's like, leave that stuff to MSNBC. They can do that fine. Like, I was going to tell him how to do his job because he's not going to listen to me. But, I don't think you're my role, even if I'm a journalist, holding the power for accountable. I don't think my role is to be, oh, look at all these good things Joe Biden's done in student debt. Look at all these good things, and just get mad at people, which is really what Kyle's doing at Crystal, or to Briahna Joy Gray, to get mad at them as someone who's supposedly a critical of the Democratic Party, left wing or whatever, for not giving Biden enough credit for the things he's done. I just cannot get that for the life of me. It's like, you do not have to be the cheerleader like that. It's like, there's so many other people already filling that role, and a big thing about what makes these people popular is that they don't do that. And so I really thought it was pretty remarkable to see. Let's go a little further.
On the left, and it's like Democrat derangement syndrome among some people on the left. The fact that we can't all agree very quickly that, well, obviously Democrats are not 10 times better than Republicans. They're 100 times better than Republicans. And even if you are somebody who's a purist and you're on the left, you can acknowledge a W in the instances you get it while still pushing for more. I mean, a perfect...
Again, this is not like a kind of a, just acknowledging. It's like, acknowledging and say, okay, hey, he's still pushing, he's still doing the Higher Education Act, we got to keep pushing him. I don't think you need to go more in on that. You just don't. You don't especially need to go to people who are kind of your would-be erstwhile allies and say, you're crazy if you're not happy exactly with what Joe Biden's doing. Like, you have to be, you have to really just make sure. It's like, what does he want? Does he want him sending me a thank you note for pursuing student debt with the Higher Education Act? Like, would that be good enough for Kyle Klinsky? It's like everyone who's criticized him on this has to send him a thank you note saying, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you're way better than my. It's like, again, it's just this. It seems like there's this insistence from him and from certain other kind of left-wing media figures, as irrelevant they may be, like there seems to be this absolute insistence to always kind of support, always have the back of Joe Biden. It's just like, if you're not giving absolute credit, taking every minute of your day to say, well, I'm as tough on Biden as the next guy, but oh wow, he did something really good here. This is like, come on, like really, we're better than this.
Perfect example is what's happening in Minnesota right now. Minnesota has a 1-seat Democrat majority. We got universal free school meals, legal weed, carbon-free electricity by 2040, tax rebates for the working class up to $1,300 if you make under $150,000 a year, 12 weeks paid family leave, 12 weeks paid sick leave. They banned conversion therapy. They did red flag laws for guns. They did universal background checks for guns. They did automatic voter registration, public free college if you make under $80K, a ban on PFAs, which is the forever chemicals, $2.2 billion increase in K-12 school funding, sectoral bargaining for nursing home workers. These things are all not little wins. They are huge wins. And I still see this insistence like we're back in 2016 or something where people are like, nope, Democrats and Republicans are either equally bad or actually jujitsu move, Republicans are the lesser evil. And I think it's idiotic. It's doomerist. It's nihilist. It's people who are refusing to acknowledge reality, and they'd rather narrative hump all day talking about Democrats are so...
Okay, yeah, so I think it's also kind of a classic thing of someone who, you see this a lot of times. Luckily, I'm not going to be in this position anytime soon, but, like, you get so many replies. You get so many people in here saying all these things that, most normal people don't say, don't believe, all this kind of crazy stuff online. And you start to, take that into your heart and take that into your soul as, like, the kind of the real persuasion of people, and just get pissed at the comments. And you start reading the comments too much, you get pissed at the comments, and you get, start to, go off the walls, go crazy. I think it's happening a little bit to Kyle here. It's like, if you are coming out and saying, the forces for progress are better, I care about progress, I care about X, Y, Z, vaguely, ostensibly left-wing policies, and you're saying the Republicans are better for that than the Democrats, like, you are getting, like, you're an idiot. You should be dismissed out of hand pretty quickly, but you're also a minority. And the fact that, apparently that big, it's a minority that's, maybe a few thousand people on the internet or whatever, but, like, when you look at Kyle, he's acting, they're probably all in his comments telling him he's an idiot or whatever, because, like, that's what he seems to be bringing to the table. And it's like, the interest of the Democratic Party, through a lot of these situations, and the Democratic Party, like, they just didn't get there on their own with the Minnesota situation. They got there because they had strong union support, because they had the composition of the representatives that they've had were different, and the political situation through outside action, through outside pressure, that was what brought about the change. And that change, I just don't think is applicable. Kind of an example. It's like, so say if we give Democrats a 1-seat majority, they're going to do the same thing they did in Minnesota. So it's like that's almost what that logic would kind of pretend to, is saying, like, Democrats in Minnesota are the same as Democrats at the national level, and we know they're not, because Democrats just had a 1-seat majority on the national level, and they were unable to do anything near what all the great things that Tim Walz has done in Minnesota. And even then, on a big bill to kind of protect the rights for delivery workers, then Tim Walz vetoed the bill under immense pressure from Uber and Lyft. So it's like, even like putting your hope in and saying just because they do good things, we have to bow down to these Democratic Party people and give them praise and give them credit, when they're doing good things that, I just, it's not like, well, it is their job. It's not like we expect them to do it, but it happened not because they're good people, because they were pushed to do it. Or it's not because their voters were really, really nice online or whatever. It's because they were pushed by outside forces, by outside groups getting people in positions of power in mostly in the Minneapolis area, which is a heavily left-wing, well-organized political city, to get these people in the positions to get in there, pass the bills, push the bills, make the votes, and have the majorities to pass this stuff. So it's like, that is how that change happens. That change has not happened at a national scale, and there's much more resistance. So it's just not by any sense an applicable comparison. And it's like, yeah, it's really, I think it's a almost dangerous misunderstanding of how change happens. And, just it's almost this idea. It's like, if we really support the Democrats and we just give a little bit more, it's like this kind of vote harder bullshit. Which is like, oh, if we give the Democrats a little bit more support, just a little bit more love, and give them one more extra seat, they would do all these great things. And no, it's like, you have to have the right Democrats, and you have to have the outside organizations there to make sure that they are held accountable. You can't do any change without both, not one, but both of those two things being a reality.
So bad, Democrats are so bad, but oh yeah, I'm a leftist.
And I promised that I did.
So that's a little crypt there. So I want to get a taste of this. Is Briahna Joy Gray's reaction from the debate the next day on her show that she hosts on Rising with Robbie Suave.
Respond. People really like to circulate that clip in particular on the internet because I took a deep breath because in my subjective view that all that he said was non-responsive to the point that I was trying to make before he started going on that dialogue.
Does that we have you next responding? I think.
Oh, I'm not sure what clips have been chosen, but we can keep rolling the clip. Here's a little bit more of the debate.
If it comes down to World War III versus that litany of achievements that you just articulated, there are people that, with the hindsight of living in the nuclear holocaust, would say, well, I guess that Trump actually was a better president.
I don't Who's more likely to get us World War III, though? I definitely think it's Trump. I definitely think it's Trump more likely to get us World War III.
I don't want to know what people think.
You disagree with that?
I want to know what you think. Do you think that that's accurate? Because to me, I look at the record.
We don't know until history happens what history is going to do. I wouldn't have expected that under Biden we would have gotten in the middle of this war with Ukraine and Russia. I would not. That wasn't on my bingo card either.
Yeah, but
again, it's another. Honestly, got to be honest, a bad look there from Kyle because it's like presidents. I wouldn't have expected Biden to go to Ukraine. I wouldn't have expected Biden to pull out of Afghanistan. I wouldn't have expected Trump to meet with Kim Jong-un. I wouldn't have expected to make the most substantive steps towards peace with North Korea that we've seen in a really long time. But he's in that driver's seat. By and large, I think it's very fair to say that foreign policy decisions are not made by the president. Like, it's not like, Biden was sitting in there and saying, oh, we have to get into Ukraine. But also, it's not like Trump is going to sitting there and just be a great supporter of peace either. It's going to be people in their ear. It's going to be generals at the right time. Like, these are two incredibly senile people here. It's like the foreign policy decisions are not being made by the presidents. Like, people just need to understand this here. They may have some personal sort of eccentricities, but by the end of the day, it's dictated by world events and by people in, both at the heights of multinational corporations, at the heights of our military, and by, when people responding to, events on a really kind of kind of external system that really is just not dependent on ideology. Let's hear the rest of Briahna's response.
We know that Trump was actually more hawkish towards Russia than
he built up on NATO's border.
Obama
he put troops on NATO's border.
We know what he did with Iran. We know he said he was going to get on Afghanistan. Biden actually did it. So we can evaluate these two claims. We shouldn't believe anything that Donald Trump says about Ukraine.
A toxic. This is literally just a vote blue no matter who a lesser of two evils conversation.
No, it's a let's discuss the facts and how you weigh them conversation.
Here, how about this? Biden can be 10 times better than Trump. Let's concede that for the sake of argument. I'm not voting for him.
So what was in my...
Yeah, so that's a very kind of good point. It's like, it's not, and it comes back to this, vote blue no matter who type of vibe set. It's like, bottom line when it comes down, certain people, again, and Briahna said this very well, certain people who are not Democrats, who are not deeply tied to the Democratic Party, it's okay if you are, and I can have your own opinions about it if you are, but it's like, that does not mean... Like, I'm not going to judge you for it, but it's like you could be tied to the Democratic, but there's a lot of people who are not tied to the Democratic Party. They want to see change on their own terms, and they have different standards from their involvement with the politics. Just instead of just like the mainstream media wants every time, comparing the Democrat to the Republican, saying who's worse, saying, oh well, the Democrats, the Republicans really bad. I have to support the Democrats. It's like no, some people want to see certain things from their politicians, and until if they don't see them represented, they see no choice in devoting themselves to Team Blue or whatever. So it's again really again good look there from Briahna Joy Gray, who is as always a very good voice, a good faith voice for conversations that are important and need to be had. We're back on Wednesday. It is Newsflash.